Craig? Hi. Good to see you. So a warm welcome to Berlin, and because this is a hybrid event, also to all other sites and people in Germany and Europe and I guess all over our planet. Before we start, I would first of all like to thank Doreen Dietzen from the DZNE, Claudia Malke from NeoQ, and also Linda for coordinating and setting up this event. So this is a rather unique and special event today. And why are we here? What is this symposium all about? This symposium is about Craig Garner. And what I'm trying to do today is, instead of having kind of sad moments with farewell thoughts, I would like to start today into the future in making and creating new and happy memories. And this is what I will try to trigger today. So as to give this a little bit of a kind of a scientific background, so as some of you might know, we are interested in memory. So how is the central nervous system able to encode and store memories within synapses and small neuronal circuits and so on? And this sounds a bit nerdy and perhaps like computer sciences for some of you, but I think memory is interesting because it is perhaps the very first higher order brain function which we might understand down to a cellular or molecular mechanism. We can bind philosophy, psychology, where this research was integrated for centuries or even longer, and now with modern biology, optogenetics, chemogenetics, and so on. I think it's also much more than this. It's actually our personality. It binds, it creates friendship, it binds societies, cultures, can even cause conflicts and even more. And you realize that it is really your personality, the very same moment when you see a failure of memory, which is nothing else than dementia. And this is why we are also here today, because Craig and myself, we are integrated into the German Center for Neurodegenerative Disorders. I selected this book here, which was written from the CEO, the founder and the CEO from the Happiness Research Institute from Copenhagen. So Denmark, I think within the last 10 years, I think 6 or 7 times the happiest people. And I guess it's not because of the weather. There are other things which are more. Is there also a pointer here which I can use? Do we have a pointer? This one is not working. No, it's not. Okay, yeah. Not so many details here on the slide. So on the left side is this book Lücke, and this is all about happiness research investigation. It's almost half my Bible, and it's about a lot on details on social interactions. And this new book here is The Art of Making Memories. And if you read some of the comments, and which I will read now, you get an idea of what this is about. Happy memories are essential to our mental health. In this book, Mike Ring, who's the author, is teaching us how to create and remember happy moments, and will change how you think about happy memories. Why is it that a piece of music, a smell, a taste can take us back to something we had forgotten? How is it that we remember a kiss in great detail but barely remember anything of a fortnight holiday from several years ago. Memories are the cornerstones of our identity, shaping who we are, how we act, and how we feel. Memory strengthens our relationships and partnerships, but how do we make and keep the memories that bring us lasting joy? Thanks, Claudia. Here we go. And further, happiness expert Mike has the answers. In the art of making memories, he brings together his extensive research drawn from the world's biggest study on happy memories, which involves more than 1,000 people from more than 75 countries, conducted at the Happiness Research Institute, along with data, diaries, interviews, global surveys and studies, and real-life behavioral science and happiness experiments to explain the nuances and nostalgia to the different ways we form memories around our experience and how we can become better at recalling them. So today, as I said at the beginning, we will start for the creation of new happy memories. That's the goal. Let me give you a brief academic introduction, which I will keep short because yesterday when we had dinner, Craig and Chris and myself, he doesn't like that so much to talk about him being special. But briefly, so Craig, it's clearly an academic scientific giant, is my hero. And very briefly about his curriculum vitae or his oeuvre, he started in Indiana and with his bachelor, then he continued with receiving a PhD in biochemistry at Rutgers University in New Jersey. Then, a bit unusual, I would say, at that time, he moved to Europe, to Basel, Switzerland, to work in the, I think, relatively newly established Friedrich Miescher Institute, to work with Andrew Matus. And then, shortly after, he started his own lab in Hamburg, the Center for Molecular Neurobiology. I'm sure we will hear later more about this. And then, had actually many offers, but then returned back to the US to work as a professor in Birmingham, and then for many years also at Stanford University, and which was around that time selected as, I think, the best university on our planet. Meaning, I'm only telling this because we were able to bring him over here to Berlin, which was, amazing. And I will have a few slides on this, why this was possible. One is here. So Craig worked a lot. He had his very first paper in his PhD was published in PNAS, and in postdoc he published immediately Nature papers with Andrew Matus, very specific things on local translation, messenger RNA, MAP-P2, many synaptic proteins on the presynaptic side, on the postsynaptic side he discovered. If you look in all his numbers, citations, index, H, I, G, whatever, enormous. Which brought him here is this here, because he really is a translational researcher. So he worked on Down syndrome in Stanford, and had a model system where he discovered that inhibition in this model is very important, and that he found a tool, reuse of a drug, which could rescue some of the phenotypes and the cognitive dysfunction. And he took this all the way from the bench to the clinic to industry. And luckily, because we were able to bring the DZNE site here also to Berlin, he helped us, created with us and established the DZNE site here in Berlin, also with Harald Prüß, the first group leader at our site. So here, this was an offer or a request actually from one of the most prestigious journals, Cell, where they asked him what is this all about for rescuing the lost in translation. So this gives you an idea that he is really a world expert on this topic. Of course, not all the things were always that easy. I don't want to hide this from you, and I tried to help as much as possible to create this kind of environment here, to connect people, so not only basic researchers, but also basic researchers with clinicians, and this gives you an idea. It's a kind of a network analysis of joint publication and the strengths of these arrows or these connections. Tell you how many publications there are, and you see that there are many collaborative publications, and this is also, at least in part, because of crack. As I said, it's not always easy. This is a photo my daughter Hannah took when we were on a trip, also for something translational in Georgia, a project we had. I mean, it was, as you saw, so she took this photo when I was fighting against this guy here, which I found quite funny, and I thought about crack yesterday, that we also had sometimes, not we both personally, but with, I don't know, budget issues or administration, that was not always easy. Also heavy here, so this was also special from crack. So he sometimes simply came by, so he was cycling with his friends in Brandenburg, and sometimes he simply came by. We moved around that time to Pankow, and he helped us setting up our garden, backyard, and there was a dump truck dumping, I don't know, roughly 15,000 kilograms of stones on the street. And he came by, and instead of offering him a coffee or a bottle of beer, he helped us here moving these stones. And we had other also quite famous people here. Eckhart, I think he's also here in the audience. He helped also moving these stones, and I think in total we had, 4 or 5 professors plus, I don't know, several PhDs. And it was not always easy, to decide where and how to move these stones. Reminded me somehow with these heroes and these smart people. If you split up a bill in a restaurant, it's also sometimes difficult. Anyhow, so most of the time it was really fun, and he helped us also. He was involved when we were during Corona setting up a small pool. And here you see Isaac, who can enjoy, and in our garden here. And in general, crack is very much into people and into kids. And this, I don't know if you can see this. It's Sarah and Isaac, and here crack, and it's perhaps difficult to see his expression, but perhaps then you can appreciate this if you hear the sound on the next slide, and you wonder, was there more excitement?
There it is. There it is.
What did you hide under there?
A marble. A marble. Shell, again?
Yeah.
Too much excitement, that. This game is too much. Maybe we can't do this one anymore.
So here you get an impression, so very excited, crack, and solving this difficult challenge here with Isaac. And he helped us also in mentoring and education, and he was always a bit surprised that I'm very much into soccer, but not always supporting German teams. And I think he now knows that I'm very much into Messi, and we practice very early here with Isaac before he could walk, so that he can do things his father cannot do. So then I also realized that crack, before he moved here, and we had to convince him to come over, that he is also very much in cars. So modern cars, but also very old cars, perhaps not as old as this one here, but I think he was also involved then in the renovation of old cars in Stanford. Another topic Craig was very much into is food. And when he moved here, or actually I have to go back One reason that we also were able to convince him, and we brought up this story last night, is he was at that time personally in a quite a difficult situation to make the decision to come to Berlin. And I tried to convince him with scheduling every day chocolate and coffee and so on. And then I thought something unusual is really Georgian food, and the Georgian culture, which I tried to actually introduce many of you. These are so-called rinkalis, very special, very good, and these kind of eggplants here with walnut and so on. And this was special. It was not really a restaurant. It was kind of a Russian shop with Georgian food, mainly Georgian wine, dry white wine. And that very same evening there was some kind of tasting. So we started with some sparkling wine and came across a couple of dry white wines and then ended with cognac. So in total 10 different drinks, and this was a bit more than tipsy. And then we actually made it to a very nice pub, which was the so-called FC Magnetbar, where we kept going with table soccer, which was also fun. So I think the next day, he signed. So this was the trick to convince him to bring him over. He's a very funny and social guy. So these are photos from an event when we had a retreat, thanks to the NeoQ organization during the Corona pandemic, with all the guidelines here in this tent, which we could open. Here there were scientific talks and so on. Quite some activity. Isabella here with somersaults and cartwheels, and also science talks. And here in this corner you see Craig, and if you zoom in here, this is then very typical. And it's a bit like a symbolic statement, I would say. So you have Craig in the middle here, and Matthias, he's the chair of the neurology department. He's online, I think, and he wanted to be here, but is also corona positive today. Craig, as a kind of a really pure translational clinician scientist, I would call him, and then me as basic researchers, because I was not familiar with these kind of somersaults and cartwheels. I decided to buy some of these red noses from a foundation from Eckhard von Hirschhausen for cancer in kids. And if you read this book from Eckhard von Hirschhausen, it's actually the perfect move if you have a conflict to put on this nose. This solves immediately things. So I have several of those at home. I don't want to talk too much about the future on purpose, so not so much about philosophy and hammocks in Napa Valley, but perhaps very briefly, because of making new memories. Future, so Craig will move to Napa Valley, beautiful area, and you can read here, and the wine is bottled poetry. And now I'm trying to combine this with Georgian culture, which I found in August in Tiflis. Wine is the answer. What was the question? And I think the experiment would be that we take a few grapes, the oldest grapes actually, from the very east of Georgia, called Cachetian, and it's called Katsiteli, to bring them over to Napa Valley, to this area. So this, I could keep talking. I think wine, at least a small volume of it, will cause a kind of an inhibition or inhibition of inhibition, which makes it sometimes easier to create nice memories. But I'm coming to an end here, otherwise we will run out of time. So thank you so much, Craig, for sharing your time with me, with us. And perhaps you can come to the front. I have a few small things for you. So let's continue then with our next event, next talks, and I hope this works now with the hybrid. So it's Sabine Helling-Mögen and Pierluigi Nicotera from Bonn, the directors of the DZNE. Can you somehow help us getting this going? Is this working?
Can you hear us, Dietmar? Obviously not. Can you hear us? Dietmar, can you hear us?
Yeah, there you are.
Okay,
Hi, Sabine.
very
Hi,
good.
Pierluigi.
I hope you can see us as well.
Thanks for coming in. You're on stage, both of you now.
Okay, so first of all, thank you, Dietmar, for setting this up. It's a pity that we cannot be there in person, but we are here with all of you, with Craig in particular, and it's great to see so many colleagues and friends to be present at this symposium. So first of all, let me just tell you that, of course, we will miss you, Craig, a lot. We will miss your input. We will miss your initiatives, your ideas, and the approach, which is obviously different from the one that we have been used in many years in Germany. I think your insight from your background, from your culture, from your scientific experience has been invaluable for us. But of course, the science in the first place. I think we still underestimate the importance of synaptic biology in the development of neurodegenerative diseases. Of course, everybody knows that synapses are damaged in Alzheimer, Parkinson, and so on, but very little insight has driven us to be able to go towards specifically curing synaptic dysfunction that may happen in these conditions. Craig's work has been seminal over many years in understanding synaptic biology and synaptic functions, from his discoveries concerning synaptic structure, piccolo and bassoon, as well as the understanding that they may be altered and the alterations in the presynaptic compartment, which actually are not very well taken into consideration by the general field of neurodegenerative diseases, have been extremely valuable and published in high impact factor journals. And of course, this has been a tremendous contribution that you have given, Craig, both to the site in Berlin, to the whole DZNE. And so science has been progressing pretty well. But I think two other components that Sabine and I wanted to focus today were how tremendous has been your input in terms of our collegial activities. You've always been extremely active in our meetings, in our discussions, in how to improve the organization, in how to make it working, but also extremely useful in cooperation. And the example of the cooperation that DZNE has with the Charité, I think, is one of the very best in Germany. It has been extremely successful, continues to be so. And thanks also, of course, to you and Dietmar and all the other colleagues in Berlin. And we are really very happy and proud of this. But also two other things which I would like to emphasize. One has been taken into consideration already by Dietmar, and it is your wish to be able to bridge fundamental research with translation, with making new medicines, new drugs, and trying to bridge the gap, the valley of death, that basically is still a problem, especially in developing drugs for the nervous system. The other thing, it is your ability as a mentor. Young people and even scientists who are now being advancing very, very fast in their career, I think, have benefited from your input and your experience in this area. So I think this is a combination that in general is very rare, and having everything together in the past 8 years, because you came to work with us in 2014, and has been really invaluable. And definitely we have appreciated tremendously your input. We have appreciated tremendously your work to be able to make this DZNE better. And we wish you all the very best for the future, for your personal life, and for your work continuously, and even for drinking wine in Napa Valley, I understand. We hope that sometimes if we are passing by there, maybe we can share a bottle of wine with you. I would definitely be delighted for that. So we can only wish you all the best for the future, and a big thanks again, and a big hug from my side. And I think Sabine may wish to add something more.
Absolutely, from my side as well. Again, as Pierluigi said, this will also to support young people. That is something that will stick to my memory, especially. And as Pierluigi said, that you were always engaging very intensively in all the discussions that bring DZNE further. So yes, a big thank you from my side, and a big hello and thank you also from all colleagues from Bonn, of course. And hope to see you soon in whatever environment is suitable then.
Better with a glass of wine.
Yes. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Sabine and Pierluigi. We have also created a small movie from other DZNE sites. I mean, coordinating such a meeting during Corona and all these guidelines in advance was not that easy. So we were a bit limited in terms of, as you know, a number of people bringing here into this lecture hall. So perhaps you can play this movie now from the speakers from the other DZNE sites, or at least some of them. Here we go. No? It's also nice.
I first met Greg Garner at a meeting in Magdeburg, where we now have a DZNE site. But back then there was no DZNE site, so we met at a meeting at the Linden. And
we are working together in the DZNE, that's for quite a while, but it seems that he has always been there within this group of side speakers, and so Kirk was always part of the show and of the operation getting the DZNE started.
I think he's one of the key persons actually looking at synapse physiology, and he definitely has big footsteps there.
I'm not an expert in this field of synaptography, but I know that he has been world acknowledged for his works and is easily to be seen from his distinguished career. But I have felt that he has contributed to the DZNE's culture in terms of thinking out of the box. He kind of managed somehow to look beyond his own field into other fields. He could bring aspects of neurodegenerative disease that were otherwise not really present in the center. And he had this particular take, working on Down syndrome, working on a couple of aspects which, at least for me, were largely new or unexpected. And so I learned in general to widen the scope on thinking about these questions.
And he also, developed this enthusiasm and the structure for motivating scientists to go beyond science, so to become, for instance, entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so I mean, he's a very enthusiastic person and a great scientist, and I think if he goes for a project, then he can really motivate the whole team to work on this and go the whole way.
He had this easy way of bringing in complex messages and also having some uncomfortable truth, but presenting them in a friendly and very constructive way. He obviously had a lot of experience, and he could share that with us in a way that was not this type, but very open and friendly.
Yeah, so I appreciate him, of course, as a colleague, as a scientist, but also basically when it comes to the promotion of young scientists. I mean, he was very much engaged in this.
So Craig thought about the 95% of our applicants to the tenure track program who cannot reach this goal because there's only 5% to succeed. And he was making a topic out of that. So these are all brilliant young scientists. So we need to have perspectives for them also outside of the DZNE.
So I think what's special about Craig is that he really radiates enthusiasm for science. So whenever you talk to him, he has a sparkle in his eyes. So it's really always very motivating and a lot of fun to discuss things with him. And that's what I like. You can discuss anything with Craig.
Yeah, actually, so I remember one thing that was quite funny. So we were on a meeting, I think that was even in Bonn, and then we were discussing. He was pretty new to the DZNE, and I am, for example, always, but sometimes go running during the lunch break, and Craig is doing yoga. And it appears that actually that his office at the DZNE in Berlin, the lower half of the door is glass. And when he was doing yoga then during lunchtime, basically, he was lying on the floor and people were passing by and they get really panicked because they thought he had a heart attack and stormed into the office.
I think we can learn from him to stay young, to stay vivid and stay attentive to thoughts that may not be our first and main thoughts, but that may equally be important for us to consider. And so he has extended our vision, our perspectives on science by bringing in aspects that he was oftentimes the first to mention. And then, of course, everybody thought, well, yes, yeah, that is a point. We should consider that. This is something that we owe him.
I was always impressed from Craig how easy and how friendly he could interact with people and how well he could moderate situations. And I think that's something really to learn from him. And I hope that I did.
And I hope we have also been nice to him and have made it a little more comfortable to live in Germany all the time for him, because I know that he was missing the US.
But of course, he's moving on now. And in a way, actually, of course, science is doing good to protect from all these diseases. But also actually drinking red wine. And I think that's what he's going to do in the future. So as far as I understand, he goes back to his vineyard in California, not the worst thing.
Craig is a colleague who the vineyard perspective really makes sense. So there is not at all anything that doesn't fit. So we can easily imagine him happily on his vineyard. And as my colleagues in the DZNE, of course, we are looking forward to visit him there.
Yeah, Craig, I wish you all the best. The coming years, I'm sure that you will still do great things, and don't forget us. It was a great time working with you, and a great pleasure and honor.
Well, dear Craig, it was really a pleasure and also quite a nice experience to interact with you scientifically. So I hope you're going to stay in science. But I also wish you all the best in your vineyard in California. And of course, I would love to come around when we are there and we can have a glass of wine together.
Yeah, dear Craig, I hope really that we will stay in touch. Not just because I want to visit you at your wonderful new home in California, but also because I really would appreciate keeping, the scientific link with you and have the odd discussion from time to time. And of course, I hope you will be able to enjoy your, wonderful new adventure in winemaking.
You deserve a good life in California for all that you have done. And of course, be sure that we will look closely about your products that you will deliver in the future, and we will come and taste. And I'm looking forward to see you in your new life on your vineyard. All the best.
And of course, all the best to you and your family. But all the best, but stay in touch.
Yeah, thanks, Amber, Andre, Gerd, and Wolfgang, for contributing here, and of course also the communication side from Bonn, creating this movie. I wonder whether Craig's family and Abby is online, and they might be a bit nervous now. Perhaps they need some construction going on there. For bringing all the people who want to come to Napa Valley. So let's continue now with Susanne. I don't know, is the presentation set up, Susanne? Yeah. Okay.
Or you'll build an extra apartment so everybody can come in.
So Susanne, I guess I'll have to introduce from the DZNE side Berlin.
Yeah.
This is all I have for presentation. But I thought it's so beautiful, and it's just, yeah. I'm gonna time myself because I easily get lost when I talk about Greg, so, okay. So I'm very happy that I can be here and represent basically the junior faculty, but also probably all other mentees that Greg has had and has all over his career. And Greg is a very special mentor, and Pierluigi already said that. There's a lot of achievement of you, Greg, in putting effort to push young people. And I think one of the strong things that is there is that you can not just, or go far beyond just giving an advice 1, 2, 3 times that is really helping and bring forward, but you build these long-term relationships. One example we have here, I think, among us, and it's Camille, for example. She knows you since 22 years, I found out. When she was still, in her words, baby graduate student in Berkeley, in her first semester, she was pushed by her PI to write this email, ask for a plasmid to this professor at Stanford. She was super scared, she told me, because she didn't even know that was possible, that a baby graduate, can write an email directly to a professor at Stanford asking for GFP bassoon to label synopsis. Well, she did, revised her email multiple times and sent it off scared, probably like this. But she was super surprised because you immediately answered and asked for a phone call. And then you ended up chatting on the phone for an hour about science, plans, GFP bassoon, all of the things and what you're up to. And that was just the beginning. This was 22 years ago now. And you kept in touch through these years on meetings, on synopsis. And eventually at some of those meetings, or one, you told her about the Berlin side, and now she's here. So fantastic. Thanks, Greg, for bringing Camille here. But also it's, I think, a very nice story that shows how long-term established mentorship works for Greg. So I'm sure we all agree that being a mentor, a good mentor, is kind of desirable. But also we know it's really difficult. And so I tried to figure out what it actually needs to be a mentor like Greg. And I've distilled it down to 3 main ingredients. It's like a cooking recipe I think that Greg probably uses. There's, of course, other ingredients I don't know. But the first one I would say is empathy that he has. The empathy and the true passion for accelerating others, uplifting and accelerating others. I think this is ingredient number 1, probably most important, like flour in most cakes. Then you add the butter, or in Greg's case, it's his ability of seeing the mechanisms behind problems and behind what is happening in real life. So meaning, I always found it impressive when we talk that you kind of don't see the obvious, which everyone sees, but you see the mechanism behind. And this is true for science and research as well as for personal relationships or just normal life. And then ingredient number 3, I think, is the communication way that Greg has. So I think that's where we all can learn, and not just mentees as a junior faculty or postdoc or PhD level, but also probably senior members, when it's the way of communicating in a way that is transparent, sensitive, and respectful. And I think then you'd only need incubation for multiple years at room temperature, and eventually you can probably or not make it. So it's a bit, of course, not everyone can get there. But I feel that might be actually what it distills to. For people in junior faculty here in the DZNE, Greg certainly has a really special role because he was and is still involved in the whole process and welcoming you, then and like integrating you in the system, and then also to supporting you throughout. And as a typical thing that usually happens for us, and I think for most of us, actually, it's in the beginning, there's a solid 2-hour welcome coffee, one-on-one. This can happen on the rooftop of the CCO when there's good weather, or in one of the many favorite coffee spots that he has a lot in Mitte. In this 2-hour meeting, you learn a lot about how things go here in Berlin, how the structure is, about the who works with whom or who's where, and he tries to share his network. Then he tries to find out what you work on, who might be helpful for you, so connect you to people, make connections, but also, of course, infiltrates the first wisdoms. So one thing that struck a few of us was that, for example, the ability of you, Greg, to really distill down and prioritize on important things. And that was not just in this first meeting, but also later very pragmatic, say, okay, this makes sense, this not. We're not going to do this, we do this. And this is something I think that everyone of us, young faculty, actually, of course, you have to learn that when you come into game for a research group leader, but it was really helpful to see that and to have a goal to go there eventually. One other thing that came up in comes often up in these first 2 hours of coffee, I must say Greg is a huge coffee lover. So if I would need to know a place in Mitte, very hip, best coffee, I would ask him. So if you have a question, I recommend you talk to Greg. He knows the places with best coffee and the best crunchy, super buttery croissants. Because I think this is what Abby and him researched also multiple years while being here, and they really got this down. So that was just a side note. So, one thing that I remember that you said in the beginning in these starting meetings to many of us is that you observed that young junior people try to emulate what senior people are doing, senior PIs, and that is sitting on your butt on your desk, working on the computer, and you encouraged us to actually not do that, but get off the chair, go to the bench, and realize that you are your best postdoc at this point, and you are the rock star in your lab. So there's a very nice example where that really resonated. For example, in Sylvia. Sylvia took that advice immediately, she told me, and went to the basement basically, or he has the mouse houses in the first floor, got the mice, did experiments the next 2 nights or 3 nights, and got fantastic cool data, which she could put together for a grant proposal, which was evaluated excellent. So check. Very good advice, mentor Greg. So yeah, so that is also probably an example how really your advice often resonated and also was taken as a true advice and led us to success. Now I have to quickly look at my notes. 1 second. What I got? Okay, what do I miss? Haha. So beyond these very practical mentoring advices, Greg is also has given some really good real-life hacks. One example I want to bring up is something that Harald told me and that he remembered. So there was 5-year DZNE anniversary celebration in Bonn. Obviously, it was before my time, but I was told it was like a bit formal. People dress up. It was like a celebration. Okay, yeah, we have 5 years. And Harald happened to walk in that event with you because he was a really junior faculty here at the DZNE at that time. And when you guys walked in, there was, of course, no dressing up from Greg. He was just casual as usual, but respectful casual, of course. And then the first thing that he asked at the front to the press spokesman was, "Where's the beer?" And in that, Harald was really impressed, and I think there was actually multiple lessons in this little anecdote here. So first was you don't have to obey rules to be a good contributor to science, I think. And then make sure that you know where the resources are and the opportunities. And then third, take care of yourself. So I think these are the main messages that came across, and I think it's a very nice acted out in this little phrase. Yeah. So me, myself, I have a very special connection to Greg as well. So when I came, you helped me very much with integrating. So I remember in the very first months when my people started, we were immediately invited and we had shared lab meetings with your crew, which helped a lot because we have a mini crew. We were 3 people and we could discuss science and learn from others, which was fantastic. And it helped so much to get, for myself, integrated in the research community, but also for my people to connect to all your lab crew, the beautiful ladies, and Kazi, King Kazi. And then it continued. You kind of always shared with me like resources, equipment, but also ideas. So I remember the really long more 2-hour coffee breaks in hip coffee shops where we discussed just some random science. My brain was almost exploding because I had to learn so much out of a sudden about immunology and everything. It's like, oh my God, I've never heard about those things, but it was very stimulating in a way. And what I really took home also, and what made me really feel good about this, is that you valued my opinion and asked me for advice in some points. And I feel this was a really good move to take also for others that want to be a mentor, a good one, then that you can basically show appreciation for your mentee. Yeah, and then last but not least, you lately helped me very nicely getting my tenure track report together, and I found that was also a huge effort from your side, and I appreciate that because at that time you were between the US, between here and probably in the air while doing this, etc. So yeah, it was really, I want to say a big thank you for this. And the most trust I think you probably showed me when I was allowed to take care of your baby little dog for a weekend. Yeah. Yeah, with that, I stopped talking. My timer is still running, so I'm not late, that's good. But because I know there's also a nice contribution from your current mentees in your PhD postdoc lab coming. But I want to really thank you for all your great mentoring, and from us and the junior faculty, but also from all your mentees across the world that are somewhere, and just say you are really mentor rock star. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Susanne, for this great speech. There's no discussion, though. So I think the next contribution is actually from Craig's research team. And how is this organized? This is also a movie, right? Is this true? Can you? No, you are getting on stage. Okay, sorry, I got this wrong.
Hello, everyone. We are here on behalf of Craig's lab. And this day is both bitter and sweet for, I think, all of us present here today. It is not easy to say goodbye to a person who is both a fantastic scientist and an entrepreneur, but also, as just mentioned, a true mentor and a friend to so many of us.
I'm sure everyone present here will agree when we say that we have learned a lot from you. And though you are leaving us, the work culture and attitude that you have instilled in us, your team members, and as well as all of us who have who have interacted with you, will always stay with us forever. We know that you are retiring soon, but you cannot retire from being great.
Yes, and there's been already so many beautiful things said today, and it was also not easy for us to put how we feel into words. So we decided to sing and dance it out instead. So what you are about to see is the pinnacle of our collective non-scientific talents.
And we hope that you're going to see it and go, Mamma Mia.
Thank you.
show again, my, just how much we miss you. Yes, we'll be broken hearted, blue since the day we heard it. Why would we ever let you go? We're gonna, now we really know, my, we would never let you go. We've been confused by the boxes that you brought along. So much plastic in there, don't know what's going on. And when you go, we will miss your jokes. We think you know that you won't be away too long. You know that you're not that strong. There's more project we came up with today. One more student and perhaps you will say, whoa, Greg Garner, here you go away. My, no one can resist you. Greg Garner, does it show again? My, just how much we miss you. Yes, we'll be broken hearted, blue since the day we heard it. Why would we ever let you go? Greg Garner, even if we say bye, doesn't mean forever. Dr. Father, we still play the game. Next week we will start together. Greg Garner, here we go again. My, they press us to waiting. Greg Garner, does it show again? My, just how much we need you. Yes, we'll be broken hearted, but it's okay, we'll make it. Build your boat and sail away. Greg Garner, now we really know. My, we just have to let you go.
Wow, this was really great. Thanks so much. Wow, so much creativity here. Well, I guess we would like to keep going. Eckhart, I guess this is a difficult task now. I wonder about your movements. Are you setting up your computer here or? Okay.
Okay, now it gets difficult, I guess. But I'm afraid I have to confront you also with some science on this day. So. Okay. So I'm a bit sad, and I also am a bit happy about all these funny things that happened. This is the title of my short talk, 34 years of friendship with Craig and common research on brain synapses. So as said, I also want to talk a little bit about the science we did together. This picture you will see later, I realized already. This is actually where we met first, at the ZNE in Hamburg, where Dietmar Richter, who is maybe with us virtually today, so he brought us all together there. And after some weeks there, Craig approached me and asked me, shouldn't we do something together? So, and we thought about where we could meet with our science. He was working, and this was mentioned already, he had just this Nature paper on the first demonstration that mRNAs go to dendrites. So that translation can go out there in dendrites for MAP2. On the other hand, my work until then was at the synapse, was on neurotransmitter receptors, a glycine receptor and insect acetylcholine receptors. So we discussed for a while and said, okay, where could we meet? Let me see whether I can, oops, this is not, I wanted to start the pointer. Can't get it, okay. Here. Okay. Now I have it.
Let's see. Perhaps you can use this one here as a pointer.
But then people on the TV can also see it. That's why I prefer to use this one, right? So the structure we want to meet then is here, where the cytoskeleton in the dendrites meets the postsynapse, right? So we decided to look at this and design a program how to study this. What are the components in this? There was a well-established procedure to make what they called at that time postsynaptic density. Later we found out there are important presynaptic proteins, that's why we call it synaptic junctions, right? So we prepared these, we produced antisera against this, and we screened expression library, lambda GT11, it's almost forgotten, right? And we pulled out cDNAs and we looked for known proteins and for unknown proteins. We wanted to characterize the unknown proteins, which are a component of this structure here, the postsynaptic density. And we wanted to become famous with this, of course, right? So what we did is we got some 500 clones, 500 cDNAs, we identified more than 50 synaptic juncture proteins, and the list we looked closer at is just there. A couple of years later, because many other labs had a similar idea, there was a whole zoo or orchestra of synaptic proteins. Among those we identified, like the MAGUX, like the ProSub shanks, and also the most famous ones, the presynaptic piccolo and bassoon. So let's have a look. I have three small stories on these different types. Let's start with the MAGUX. So mainly in Craig's lab, three of the four MAGUX of the DLG-like MAGUX were cloned, which is sub-90, PSD95, or DLG4 now, or sub-97, and also the sub-102. And also we contributed by work in Drosophila to the function of these molecules, and it was clear that they are important elements. They are the Lego building blocks, more or less, at the synapse, which integrate neurotransmitter receptors or ion channels and cell adhesion molecules, bring them together. And this is the basic structure of how these proteins are assembled at the postsynapse. Right? Then we also, Greg went to UAB and I went to Magdeburg. So we succeeded to get an HFSP grant. Maybe we can switch off this light here and you see a bit more. And we had heavy discussions. heavy discussions about how to proceed there, and this is Carsten Reisner from my lab, and we established a strategy to study, in this case was SAP 97, and the strategy looked like this, right? And it was a very successful strategy, because 1 year later we had this paper, and this was the model, right? So this also kind of demonstrates the fantasy Craig had at that time. He taught us and discussed with Carsten, who was our modeler at that time, how to support this structure, how to model it, and how to find out how this affects the characteristics of SAP 97. Another very exciting story, and I remember writing this paper in Alabama, in Greg's home, right, where we showed that these subs or magucs, which are related to the Drosophila DLG protein, a tumor suppressor, right? So the mutant flies, they die as larvae in a certain instar larva stage. If you put a cDNA, in this case of SAP102 into it, and this was work by Uli Thomas, you rescue it. So brain cDNAs can rescue tumors in flies. This was the message. It's the same for SAP97, this is a tumorous disc. And if you bring SAP97 back, it gets happy, the epithelial form, and you get a fly from it. So this was my contribution to the magucs. Now, later we identified the Prosap shanks. They were also from the screen, right? And they are really the major organizers of the postsynaptic density, right? They integrate all the receptors, all glutamate receptors and the salutation molecules and also other molecules in the postsynapse. So this framework underneath the synapse, this is what our screen, together with many other labs at the same time, brought out, right? And another really, really amazing thing was all the proteins, and the prosaps were just the first ones, all the proteins we just pulled out of curiosity out of the screen, right? So we didn't think about this disease at that time, right? But all of them are nowadays involved in brain diseases, right? All of them. So this is also how you have to do basic research. You have to do curiosity-driven research to come to application. This is the next lecture, and this is something we learned together from our work. So the next one is a presynaptic orchestra. Piccolo and bassoon, real giants, actually. So you see very, very large proteins, homologous proteins or related proteins, and we got struck when we do this, right? The localization is exclusively at the active zone. We started with the postsynaptic density, and we ended up in the presynapse, in the active zone. Claudia Cases, she's now at the DZNE in Bonn, right? She struggled a lot to get cDNAs. And with this very long, so the mRNA was 17 kb, and there was no PCR at that time. There was also no databases where you could look up the genome. There was not sequenced. So she struggled hard for this. And also Susanne in my lab for bassoon, they were really fighting hard to get these cloned and to get them characterized. We were also kind of lucky a little bit that they are so large. We didn't expect them so large. We thought there are smaller proteins when we started with them. But then it turned out the biochemistry is really, really hard. And I think this was one of the reasons why we stayed alone with research on these proteins for a long time. Okay, then the next chapter. This figure jumped in, Noam Zif, a really, really good friend from Haifa University, from Technion. Again, the work started in Greg's lab in Alabama, was the discovery of transport vesicles that bring part of the active zone, which is assembled in the soma, along the axon into synapses, right? So this was the idea of the first paper on this, that there are these vesicles, active zone transport vesicles, or as we call them later, piccolo bassoon transport vesicles, and then you assemble, within very short time, you can assemble an active zone, right? And this was a drawing from Craig, used in one of his talks, that there are different types of these transport packages, transport vesicles, that very rapidly can assemble an active zone within less than an hour. Next step was also with the two proteins. Again, it started with Clarissa in Craig's lab, to show that if you knock both proteins out, both big proteins out, piccolo and bassoon, then you form synapses, but they look very messy after some time. If you have them for 2 weeks in culture, they look really, really messy, and they get lost, and the neurons die with time. So it seems they are very important for the maintenance of the function of synapses. And another whole story developed. We could show that bassoon, actually the first paper came from Stanford, that bassoon is an important player in regulating autophagy in presynapses and also regulating the proteasome. This was more on the Magdeburg side. And that it's an important player in regulating the maintenance, the turnover of synapses. And this is still going on, right? So there's a consortium, a Forschergruppe on autophagy, where Craig is still there, right? So he's part of, together with me and Christian Rosemund, he has a project there. So even if you leave to California, your brain has to stay here, right? So we meet from time to time and need your input. Okay, this was more or less a scientific part. Now let's talk about this. This is I like this really a lot, because this is how you introduced your science to the DZNE, right? So you used always this as one of your first slides. Now, I cannot judge really at which stage you are currently, where you feel. But I have to tell you, retirement is one step further, right? So you have to live with this, wherever you are now. This is also a very, very important slide. Abby, maybe you are also on the screen right now, because Abby Garner, she was the one who translated our thoughts in Hamburg into benchwork and into science. She made the library, she produced the antibodies, she was teaching the PhD students and postdocs how to do the screening, how to work with it. She was the lab manager and the mother behind all the screens. So we have to thank her really a lot for all this support over the many years. Then we had these bicycle tools. I remove this spot from here. We have these bicycle tours for many, many years, every year, at least one, right? This was a very rainy one, you remember, Craig, right? So, there were other ones, right? And we discussed directions, right? This was in science, but also where really to go, right? And some of the people are here in the audience who participated in these tours over the years. The last one, or this one, was a Corona tour, right? And this was actually after we have put all the stones that Dietmar mentioned to the near the pool, and then we had some refreshment, right? Okay, so this was about my contribution. The last one is this one, because this was actually a picture this was in my desk in Magdeburg, in my office in Magdeburg, about my desk, above my desk. And Greg liked it a lot. So I decided that he needs it for California, and I brought it to him already 2 weeks ago, that he doesn't have to carry it with the hand luggage tomorrow. And so I thought this is really fancy. It's like a deep forest in a fairy tale, and you can expect that Rotkäppchen, as we call it, Little Red Riding Hood, is coming, and there might be also the wolf coming out. So this is not on the picture, right? But it's map 2 and ProSub and early work together on this. So Greg, thanks a lot for a very good time we had together. It was a lot of fun. It was also argumentation sometimes, which was very helpful. It was also close, the families were close together, so thanks a lot. And we stay in touch. I'm not talking about your vineyard.
Thanks, Eckhard, for coming to Berlin. It wasn't secured because Eckhard called me yesterday that he wasn't sure whether he can make it because of a virus, not Corona. But it was really nice to see also a summary of all the work you guys did together on the synapses, pre and post synaptic. And now our next speaker is Uli. I think on our schedule it's NeuroCure, but Uli is of course much more. He's, I think, the director of the experimental neurology and also the Quest Center. So thanks, Uli, for contributing.
So, Craig. Well, hi there. So, I'd like to move on to a topic that hasn't been touched so much today, and that is actually Spark. But there's so much to talk about, and I have quite a full list of things which I want to share with you, so this is only part of it, so I have to move on. But first, I need to tell you about, maybe this one. Which one? It worked. Sorry. I should have checked before, I'm sorry. Okay, so before I start, I need to tell you a little bit about Spark, and there will be more about this later, but many of you know it, but some of you may not know that how successful it is, and that within 5 years, Craig created a major venture here, brought it from Stanford, and it has now a full pipeline of projects on their way to the clinic from basic research. He brought Spark not only to Berlin, but also to Europe. There are 50 sites worldwide now. He has actually succeeded in making sustainable, and it is part of the BIH now. It has a great team. So in 5 years, he was able to achieve an incredible job here. Now, how was this possible? And in fact, a lot of the qualities of Craig have already been mentioned, but I would like to, share it in a maybe a bit more structured way to you. So, can we deconstruct the success that Craig had in all this? And I think part of it is his idiom. I mean, so with his accent when he speaks German, but with his obviously fluent and brilliant English, he has roots which make him just perfect for anything here. So coming from the US, coming from Stanford, that's just, I mean, a perfect entree. He is, that wasn't mentioned so far. I think, I mean, he's a fun guy, and he's like a total sunny boy. He is very modest for all his achievements. He is totally altruistic, and also already mentioned, he's very empathic. He's enthusiastic, we have heard about this, but he's also extremely authentic, because we have heard about the science, So he's just a brilliant scientist, but he is also a Sparkee. So in other words, he has been part of the Spark program in Stanford. So he can tell everyone, look at me, I have done it, I know how this works. He's definitely a networking guy, he's Prince Charming, and he is extremely witty. So as a package, it's just Craig. And if you look at Spark, and if you know Spark, Spark is like Craig, and Craig is a bit like Spark. So it's kind of a mutual thing. And that's it. Spark is research-oriented, it's innovative, it's successful, it's global, it's educational, it's team-oriented, it's egalitarian, it's goal-oriented, and it's totally no bullshit. Now, what was my role in all this, and how did I get into the picture? There is on some websites there's mention that with Craig together I might have co-funded with him Spark in 2017, which I think is a total overstatement, because actually I feel like I was a bit like his consigliere in all this. And part of this was fighting some translational conmen that were around, or maybe are still around. And there are some villains, there were some villains, and I think Dietmar already mentioned it, that it wasn't always easy. And some just said and thought that they can do it better than Craig, which was of course bullshit. Some thought that he should do something else. And some just didn't understand what he was up to. And here's something, Craig. I know that you know what this is.
Let's mosey up the back way. Batman speaking.
This is a recording. Before you trip over your cape, Batman, riddle me this.
So, Craig, riddle me this. What do the three main adversaries of Spark have in common? We can discuss this later. You're the only one who can solve this riddle. I also know that Craig was socialized with Batman, aka Adam West, in the TV series in the 60s. So the other thing, and that wasn't mentioned so far, is that Craig has a dark side, and this is where I think my main role as a consigliere came in. And many of you don't know this, but maybe I'm the only one who actually got exposed to it. So sometimes, and there is a pattern, I don't know exactly what the cycle is, he gets these fits. And because it's not just out of the blue, if things are heavy and people don't understand what he wants to achieve, and this is all in this Spark environment, he got really angry and he got really pissed at people, and he was calling me up like I just bought this suicide vest and I'm going in there and I'm just blowing him off. And my role was, and I did this 3 or 4 times, was to just say, well, great, let's talk about it. And actually, the suicide vest never went off. Although I think, Craig, you were right. Maybe sometimes you should have done it. So, but seriously, there are a few things that I would like to mention because. This whole translational thing, and Spark is a translational agency. There is also this mantra of translation, and there is, I think there is a problem with it. I have to say this. And as a spoiler, I have to tell you that there are these translational traps, but Craig never fell for it. Nevertheless, I would like to share them with you. And the first one is, I think that in many ways, translation has become an empty signifier. It's kind of a cheap label, a phrase for selling stuff. And just the fact that publications using translational medicine went up to 20,000 from 0 in 2000 is actually a problematic sign. It appears everywhere, and it should be done everywhere, and it should be on our minds everywhere. And I think it's kind of a mantra at this point. And then there is this thing, and we can fight it out later, because you also use this phrase or this metaphor, and that's the value of death, which is what challenges this translational path. And I completely disagree. I don't think that there is such a thing as a valley of death. It's one of the most commonly used metaphors in this context, and I stopped collecting these little cartoons. You can find them everywhere. Because I think it's actually a plane. It's not like on one side, it's just beautiful, the preclinical one, and on the clinical one, it's just beautiful, and we need a bridge. I think it's a vast plane, and there's so many things that even on those sides of the bridge, so to speak, can happen. And there are so many things. It's about complexity on the biological side and also on the clinical side. It's the problem of the low-hanging fruits, especially on the preclinical side, which have already been picked. There's a lot of robustness that is missing on the preclinical side, which also happens on the clinical side. And very often it's just about clinicians and scientists lacking resources, i.e. time. And so the metaphor, I think, sometimes is misleading, and we need to be careful with it. There's another thing which we often hear is that this, I would call it attritional angst, and that's, we are so afraid that translation goes wrong. But my good friend and colleague, Jonathan Kimmelman, he has written about this several times, and he actually somewhere coined the phrase that translation may be most successful when it fails. Why is this? This is because negative results in well-designed studies provide good quality evidence, which produces information. And this information can correct mechanistic concepts. It defines dosing and timing of treatments. It allows us to use resources for other avenues of investigation. So in essence, we just need to design experiments that lead to useful information even when the null is rejected. And we should not stop experiments if we see first signs of a null, and we should publish those results and so forth. And then there's this other thing, and that's that there is this idea that these translational breakthroughs can be engineered, and I think this is a pervasive idea. And the problem with it, I think, is that it's very often pitting applied versus basic research. And actually, if we look back, it is in most instances normal sciences in the Kuhnian sense, and serendipity is doing its magic. So we should keep up the basic research. And then there's this I think my last thing about it is that I'm a bit skeptical sometimes about this thing that scientists should become entrepreneurs. Because I think there is certainly a potential that this boosts biases, which potentially are already there, and creates conflicts of interest. But the good news is that I didn't have to fight this with Craig, and I wasn't a consigliere in this particular case, because Craig is totally no bullshit. I would say it's his middle name. I don't know what the G stands for. It's not middle name. What's the G? Curtis. Okay. So. Okay. Yeah, I thought so, but his motivation was never monetization. And advancement of knowledge, and that is information, has always been and is his priority, and the robustness of his research results and his research quality is part of his DNA as a scientist. And this is why I think, compared to many other translational agencies, Spark is just a great thing. So, lastly, there's this strange thing that I sometimes had the feeling that Craig is my older twin brother. And that is because we had a lot of fun discussing stuff where it turned out that we are interested basically in the same things. And that concerns sailing, it concerns working at a bench that is kind of a different bench than the one most people are associating with it, repairing old cars and stuff and boats, a house at the lake. There was so much talk about Craig's Napa Valley vineyard, and that's certainly a very great place, but I also happen to know that he has a house by a lake in Maine, and this is where he retires when it gets too hot in California. So there are so many things where I think our brains had kind of the same vibes, and it just happened on the other side of the Atlantic. I can finish by noting that you are leaving on a high note, I think, because scientifically, friendship-wise, and also with respect to Spark, everything's just perfect at this point. So this is the time to leave, and we had also discussions about this. I think we discussed, should you continue, or should you sort of venture on and have more time for other stuff. And my advice as a consigliere at this time was to say, well, this is what I would do. And for some reason, it seems as if you have taken my advice. I think it's just perfect. Your plan is just perfect, and I'm also looking forward to see you at some of those places. And not just California, there are other places where you are active. And so just let me finish by telling you that I miss you, and we will miss you. And thanks for everything. And I have a little thing for you.
Yeah, thank you, Uli, for this nice talk. A combination of translation and personal things, very nice. Thank you. So we have our second last talk now by Tanya from the Spark team. And is it Tanya, or I don't know? I am. Okay. You go.
Hello, everyone. We are here representing the Spark team. We are very happy to be invited to this awesome symposium here, and we have heard so far a lot about Greg being a brilliant scientist, a strong mentor, especially for the young generation, but to us he is so much more because he brought the Spark program to Berlin, and we will briefly tell you a little bit about the Spark program and about Greg's involvement here. The other one. Okay, so welcome to the Spark world. As Uli already mentioned, Spark was founded 2006 at Stanford University and has spread globally and is present at 50 universities worldwide. Greg was one of the first Sparkies, so a person with a Spark project at Stanford University. And then from there, he brought Spark in 2015 to Berlin as one of the first European Spark programs. And he set it up. Uli, I have to say, you were to us more than a consigliere. You were always there, you were mentoring, especially also very important, you had strong insights into the Charité that's not easy to navigate. And also big thanks to the Stiftung Charité, with whose funding this would have never been possible. And I'm also very happy to say that since 2018 we are an active and constant part of the Berlin Institute of Health with a large budget to support here the translational community. In addition, and furthermore, and this is also where the people will not let you go, Craig, is that he initiated the development of a very active European Spark network. We have about 12 countries participating. We work together, we enjoy the work, and we bring translation forward throughout the whole Europe. One word about Spark for people who don't know the program yet. It's a translational program. What we do is really hands-on support to drive projects out of the lab towards the patient. So the patient benefit stands above all. And we support programs from all medical disciplines. This is a very inclusive and open program. And projects can develop therapies, diagnostics, or medtech devices. In short, as Pasi, the director of Spark Finland, likes to say, we are helping to turn good ideas into great products. And with this, I give the word to Caroline.
Yeah, thank you, Tanya. So I was one of the very first ones, one of the first 3 lucky teams who were onboarded in 2015 for one of the first Spark sessions. And from the very first minute on, I was really inspired by Craig's great enthusiasm, his passion for science. So he brought to us the American spirit of inclusiveness, of interdisciplinary. He has had his mentality of, yes, we can. This was always something he taught us. And what was also very important, to leave one's ego at the door, meaning that every voice in the room is important. It's not about who you are, it's important about your project. And that was always what he cared for most. So, supporting academic entrepreneurs, so he himself, as a serial entrepreneur, was really dedicated to doing this, and we heard this in the previous talks already. He was always very generous, giving advice to numbers of teams to make the projects a lot better. He changed the mindset of our community to get progress for our projects, and together with his help, altogether now 5 companies could be founded within the last 7 years, starting from 2015 with the first projects who were funded by the Spark initiative here in Berlin. This is really a great success, and Craig, you're really part of this. Without you, this wouldn't have been possible. Another important thing about Spark is networking. As a very important issue. So bringing experts into the program who give back something they have learned, stakeholders both from academia and from industry, pro bono for strengthening the projects of our Spark community. And Craig really built and fostered this community with his enormous energy. So this resulted then in a very active network. Here you can see the onboarding of new projects here in 2021. This led to Spark global meetings here in Berlin on the right-hand side, where projects and Spark programs from all over the world met, and also the possibility for pitch meetings, as you can see here downside, where projects had the possibilities to show their progress and also to get interest from industry and other stakeholders. And with this, I hand over to you, Franz.
Thanks. Yeah, right here. Yeah. Okay. So you should know that since 2015, 7 calls were initiated by the BIH Spark initiative. And you can see that during these calls, the selected projects, of course, had to go through presentations. There were an external board of something like 12 to 14 consultants, so externally evaluated projects. And either 6 to 8 or so were selected every year, and they were supported for 1 or for 2 years. So we had different projects, either track 1 or track 2 projects. The funding was either 50,000 or something like really above 50,000 euros per year. You can see that Greg played an important role in this, so with all his sort of influencing the discussions, and he was highly active always. He supported the teams, he supported, of course, our own activity within the Spark team. He was very influential and very instrumental, of course, in doing this. He also came up with new ideas, and something like in 2020 or 2019 even, he came up with the idea of I4H, so inventions for health. And he was so important that he convinced the Stiftung Charité really to provide funding for these ideas. And I4H program basically is a pre-Spark program, so very early projects from projects teams received funding for 1 year up to 50,000 euros. And so it all goes back to, again, to an initiative by Greg. He sort of identified people from the medical design thinking activities, Jeremiah Schmidt, for example, and Greg's wife, Abby. She was also trained in design thinking approaches. So both of them were, again, very important for setting this up, and with the financial support of the Stiftung Charité, really Greg was successful to establish I4H programs within the BIH innovation. With this, we would like to thank for your attention. Greg, you have been very influential and instrumental in all of this. We really would like to thank you. And please give our love to Abby, because she also was a very important part of this. And also what really was a highlight in each and every meeting once per week was all these cookies and all these cakes we had. Really, we enjoyed it, and I'm really missing it. 2 short private notes, Greg. I'm sure you are not afraid of retirement. However, I will assure you, this is a really excellent, wonderful invention. So this is the best thing, really, what I can think of. Being in retirement, in pension, this is perfect, Greg. And I know with all your, let's say, craftsmanship skills, you will have no problem in filling your time and the evening sitting on your porch in Napa Valley together with Abby, sometimes with Lauren, or Nick will visit you, and definitely, of course, with a dog, I forgot the name. With Lily. So I can think of these Oscar-winning type of American movies, and the family is sitting there, so perfect location. And finally, I was again very much impressed, I have to say, some 3 weeks ago when we were strolling along the Spree River and we talked about various things. And I then started to talk about my book project on our Alzheimer activities and Tower X. And you said you definitely should start writing it now. You should not wait until May when the clinical trial results will come up. And then I talked about William Utermohlen, the late William Utermohlen, a well-known American painter. And he got even more well-known because he was diagnosed on Alzheimer's disease. And even before his diagnosis, you could tell that something is happening in his brain, and he was not able to paint exactly what he did a couple years earlier. And you can see subtle changes, and of course with the increase in the disease process, you can tell more and more something is really going on, something very dramatic in his paintings. And I had the chance to meet his wife, Patricia, and she gave me a guided tour back in 2006 through a Chicago museum, and she showed me and she explained me all the pictures which were drawn by her husband, William. And I told you this, and you immediately came up, look, Franz, so you need to have a special chapter in your book on William Utermohlen and his paintings and what happened to his paintings when he sort of faced Alzheimer's disease. And you should start your little chapter on this with William was an amazing person. So I want to finish with Greg is an amazing person. Thank you.
So, and since Spark is really known for being an inclusive program, we also ask a few Sparkies out of on our network to say some greetings to Craig, and I would like the movie to be started if possible.
Hi. I'm Sinje, I'm 44 and I was Craig's oldest PhD student ever. Craig from biochemistry and me from social sciences, we had such a great time exploring on how to change the translational ecosystem in Berlin. We even published our crazy ideas in Cell and in Nature, and this was a true miracle to us, to be honest. Actually, we took the concept of Craig becoming my Doktor Vater very serious and opened our family lives to each other. So to me, it's crystal clear that we are relatives now and we will see each other again and again and again, because this is how families work.
Dear Craig, I want to thank you so much for providing so much guidance, inspiration, and motivation to pursue my career as an entrepreneur. You've basically been there from the first year, and you have always pushed me to new heights. A special thanks goes out to Abby, your amazing wife, who connected us and who actually made us collaborate on a whole new level. Our partnership was always much more than just professional. I've been inspired by your words, your career, your life, your family, and I hope that one day we're going to reconnect, either here in Europe or maybe in the States. I wish you and Abby and the whole family of yours all the best for the future. Stay happy, healthy, and of course hungry. Keep pushing for more. And if there are ideas coming up, you know where to reach me. Best, Jerry.
Hi Greg, this is Sonja. Greetings from the Zugspitze. If I don't have the most innovative video today, I might have at least the one with the nicest view. I keep it short. Thank you so much for supporting us, our Spark program at the FLI, being a mentor not only to our Sparkies, but also a true mentor to me and a friend. And I wish you all the best for your next endeavor, and don't be a stranger. I hope I see you again. Take care. Bye.
Dear Craig, you're a very close colleague and true friend of mine. Since you are about to retire now from your scientific work, well, that's fine for me. But your European management team has a veto for your retirement from Spark duties, and we plan to assign you as an honorary founder of Spark Europe soft landing office in Napa Valley and the head of wine tasting moments. You will always have an open door also for attending our European manager meetings. Dear Craig, despite your retirement, our journey continues and we keep on doing new cool things.
Dearest Craig, I'm so happy to have had the chance to get to know you and to work with you. With your energy, creativity and can-do spirit, you have truly transformed and enriched the Berlin charity community and beyond. I wish you and Abby fantastic next chapter with lots of new, exciting adventures to come. Lots of love.
Hi Craig, this has been an absolutely amazing journey together with you. I can hardly believe that it's already time for you to go back to California. You brought American Californian spirit to Berlin, and it was great fun to work with you on all the different fronts that we had interactions with, the Collaborative Research Center, our joint interests with respect to synapses and synapse biogenesis, and of course your amazing work you did for Spark. So I wish you all the best, and for your future I really hope to stay in touch. So all the best to you and your family.
Hi Craig, I will never forget your enthusiasm to support a cool project. You called our therapy disruptive. I would have never used these words, but it helped to attract investors and awards. Now we are ready to found. I wish you and Abby all the best for the future. Let's stay in touch.
Hi Craig, this is Panos. I want to thank you for all of your efforts. I have to confess you're the most remarkable person I've ever met during my academic career. Thanks to you, this came true. I wish you all the best and I hope to meet you in person in the States. Good luck and see you again. Bye.
Dear Craig, first of all, I would like to thank you for all of your help and support and for developing our Metastasis Spark project further. I still remember my first Spark talk you invited me for, and I still use the little red booklet you gave me. For the future, I wish you, first of all, health for you, your family and friends, and success for all of your upcoming endeavors. Very best regards, Ulrike.
I don't know, Greg. It's just the beginning. It's not yet. Now, you're our man in the Napa Valley. You have not only widened our networks, but also our mind and spirit. Thanks for this experience.
Hi, Craig. Hi, Craig. Well, I remember an experiment when we first met. You were asking us whether muscle stem cells would reconnect after they had been separated.
And in fact, we have shown that they do. They even build bridges.
Yeah, and if you pick things that lead to further imaginations, and this is wonderful.
Dear Craig, so ever since you have had a real influence on our doings, and we strongly work together on building up something new and, as we think, quite meaningful. So thank you very much for that, and we see each other soon.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks to the Spark team. I think we are running a little bit late. Our last talk is now by Thomas Jensch from Leibniz and Helmholtz, so FMP and the MDC. So thanks, Thomas.
Okay, I won't make it very long. May I have the first slide? Well, you have seen this slide already several times, being spiked in and also in Eckhard Gundelfinger's talk. I would like to go a little bit back in time, and therefore the slide is also in black and white because it's already quite a while ago, 88, so 34 years ago. So you don't imagine how fast time really flies. So this shows the 5 of us who were junior group leaders recruited newly to Hamburg. From left to right, Kurt Grimlichhausen, myself, Craig, Eckhard, and Fritz Rathjen, who is also now in Berlin. And we were recruited at the same time because the Center for Molecular Neurobiology, the ZMNH, was newly founded by Dietmar Richter, who had the idea to found a neurobiology institute in the north of Germany. Molecular biology was not well developed in the north of Germany, so he convinced the BMBF to make a focus of neurobiology and molecular biology in the north of Germany. And we were really the first groups to go to the center, and the center was really just this building here, House 22. So this mediocre building housed all the 5 groups of us, and of course we were accustomed to really nice research institutes, famous institutions, glittery buildings and so on, but we were so courageous to go to the university clinic in Hamburg, which was scientifically not that great at that time, and to have our own work started here. And you have to imagine that also the junior groups were limited strictly to 5 years at that time. Nowadays it's 5 plus 4 years, so we were kind of under pressure to really succeed and to make our career. But we also had a lot of fun, as you can see in this old photograph. I don't know why Eckhard here is the king of us all, but you see that we looked a little bit younger at that time. Also the hair was a little bit different, at least as to the color. To the left is Kurt Grimlichhausen, who came from Holland, therefore he is dressed here as a Dutchman, and in the middle is the administrator, Jürgen Draller of our institute, because the founding director, Dietmar Richter, was quite far away, 500 meters away in a different building, which we actually enjoyed. So we were just 5 junior groups between us. There was no interference, not much mentoring, even though it's being stressed here quite a bit. And we were free to do whatever we liked. At some point, the real big professors came. This was Chica Schaller with the head activator and all of Bronstorff's potassium channels. So we were kind of avant-garde, and this was also the trick of Dietmar Richter to establish the center before a new building was really built. When we came, we were promised to move within a couple of years, or 3 or 4 years, to a new building, which would be very nice and so on. But it didn't happen within the 5 years. So even the professors, the C4 professors, were in a different temporary building on the same campus, but also away. And we were a little bit afraid that maybe we would be dominated by them, that they would take away our library, but we could stay happily having our festivities at the Institute. Here is Craig, this is his wife Abby. I have to get this one. Here to the left, Fritz Ratjen. It seems like he is looking at a smartphone, but there were no smartphone at that time available, so he must have done something totally different. And what really strikes me when I see this picture is Craig. So he was the funny guy. He was always bringing humor to us, and he had these brilliant eyes, this enthusiasm. I would like to call it intense enthusiasm about science and many other things. And indeed, he was very successful from the beginning, so he still worked on the microtubule-associated proteins, localization, local transcription, and so on and so forth, even when he left the center. And I have to admit that initially I was a little bit jealous, because my project had crashed when I came to the center. Everything was just falling apart, so I had to start anew during 2 years. But Craig, who had the lab just next to me, was a very good companion. Well, then he started the work together with Eckart. You have already heard about this, taking this very broad approach and looking for proteins at the synapse, generating antibodies, screening lambda GT11 libraries, and then making the difficult choices to really pick the candidates which are the most interesting ones, which are neuronal, which are located at the synapse and may have different functions. So these are just the first papers. You heard much more from Eckart on the SAPs, synaptic associated proteins, PSD95, and so on. But this was not everything, so this was really a gold mine, and they went on to clone Piccolo and Bassoon, now giving more fancy names to these proteins instead of SAP or SAP. And the irony here is, of course, I don't know whether you felt it at that time, that Piccolo is a really big protein. And I would like to stress here again that at that time it was really difficult to assemble these large cDNAs by continuous screening with different clones, different cDNA libraries, until you get the entire open reading frame. Well, I have assembled a little bit of statistics here, publication and citation statistics. These are the papers which Craig published together with Eckart, mostly on these commonly identified proteins. There's other papers by each of these, which are published independently, of course. And here you see a little bit the impact. It's probably not the most stringent search. Bassoon and Piccolo have in the literature the number of publications which really went up tremendously after their cloning. I think when you would look with other keywords, you would get even more papers. So they really founded a field in neurobiology and synapse biology. And of course, Craig still had many more papers, so 3 times more papers, which he published by himself or with other groups, not with Eckert, and this is given here. So a lot of success during this time, which really began at the Center for Neurobiology in Hamburg at the ZNE. Well, finally, and this was when Craig and Eckert had already moved, we were able to move to a new building, which is now the Center for Molecular Neurobiology in Hamburg. But there were several obstacles also in the way. So finding a right terrain to build the center and so on. And there was also obstruction or opposition by enemies of molecular biology, of gene technology. So I remember that we went together to a meeting which was happening in a church room with this citizens initiative to talk about our science, and we were reproached to work on eugenics because we haven't learned anything from Nazi Germany, because we said, well, maybe these proteins we are identifying here may serve to identify genetic diseases, which Eckert has also mentioned in his talk. And indeed, there were, especially before the building of the new building, demonstrations in Hamburg with something like keine künstlichen Hamburger or Hamburger, I don't know exactly, Menschlichkeit statt Hirnzucht. And there was Angst for tests mit Todesviren. These were essentially my viruses, because at the new building, one of the referees had postulated that we would need an S3 lab. The problem was that none of the groups didn't even do S2 experiments. But of course, we couldn't say, well, we don't need an S3 lab, then everybody would have yelled, these are really not considering the safety of the science. So I had to invent a project with vaccinia virus, which is S2, which I never did, by the way, to justify a little bit the building of this lab. Well, more recently, I went to the UKE campus, and out of well, nice memories, I went back to the building. It's still there, the temporary building. And to my surprise, I looked here, and I found my name still on this building. After 20 years, after I had, or more than 20 years, I had left this building. Craig's name is no longer there, but Dietmar Kuhl's name, who was his direct successor and had the lab directly next to myself. Okay, so recently we had the Blankenese conference, which was all the time, every 2 years, I guess, organized by Dietmar Richter. And we had a very nice time because Dietmar invited many of the former colleagues of the ZNE, including Craig. And here we are, the three of us with Dietmar Richter, and looking at this photograph, I have the feeling that Dietmar Richter is the only one who didn't grow any older. So this brings me now really to the end of my talk, and I come back to the glaring, enthusiastic eyes of Craig. And I say thank you very much, Craig, for the wonderful time we had together, and I wish you all the best, and I hope I will be able to visit you in California. And something I would like to do is to sail in your boat. You promised to build a boat, and I will be on the boat. Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thanks Thomas. It's a nice talk. It's a bit scary, I have to say. I'm still looking here at Craig here on the screen. So we made a small addition very briefly. So Noam Ziff also comes in, and is it possible technically? He wanted to spend a few words on Craig. I just received an email from Claudia Malke, that Noam contacted her. I mean, we can't go through the whole to all of them, but I think I do make an exception now for Noam, if this is okay. Ziff.
Hello, everybody. Sorry for barging in. This has been really exciting. Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I think this has been incredibly moving. Craig, I noticed Cameron was in the audience, so I sent a hug for you to her. So that's the only way I can actually physically do it. I don't know what to say. I think I'm only now realizing how blessed I was to actually know you, hearing the history. I think it's something I actually didn't know so much. I made a little presentation. I won't bore you with it. I'll send it to you directly. But I just want to convey my enormous friendship, my love, and just to let you know that I feel privileged to have known you during these 20 years or so, including a paper that was just published 2 weeks ago, I think, from your lab. So it has been ongoing. So thank you enormously, and the best of luck, and I hope to visit you soon in Napa. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks, Noam. And thanks, to all of you. And I think it's quite emotional. I have to say it's. I don't know how Craig feels, but I'm really touched and moved. And I guess we somehow have really created some memories here. I think happy memories. We won't forget this event. So what I would like to do now is, can we get all on stage and take one photo? I'm putting Craig somehow in the mix. And then we need to have a glass of wine to practice a bit. So please come all on stage.
Nächste Wochenende, genau. Und deine? Alles mit wie ist denn dein?
Mein Duke ist jetzt auf der Straße zugelassen. Bin gestern gefahren.
Und?
Ja,
sind
weiter gefahren.
Ja.
Und dann ist er liegen geblieben, musste ihn jetzt zurückschleppen. So die Anfangsschwierigkeiten.
Ja, sollen wir da wieder...
Ich wollte gerade sagen, das war gar nicht alle.
Der Gang ist nicht mehr ausgegangen.
Zum Glück. Sie verzerrt.
I think you have to go more center. Yeah. Are you sure? Otherwise you're hidden.
Charterflieger organisieren.